Oda was just an average high school student. So average, in fact, that half his classmates sometimes forgot he even existed. Most days, he spent his time quietly reading isekai novels by himself. It wasn't that anyone bullied him, he just preferred being alone. The thought of someone suddenly talking to him made his chest tighten with anxiety. So he found it easier to blend into the background and stay invisible. Then, out of nowhere, the classroom lights flickered, and a black sphere appeared in midair. A glowing summoning circle spread out above everyone's heads, and before they could react, the entire class was transported into a huge hall. An old bald man stood at the front, calling for their attention. He said the king had an important message. Naturally, everyone freaked out. Being suddenly teleported to another world isn't exactly normal. The students demanded answers, shouting over one another, but the man didn't care about their protests. He simply ordered them to be quiet and listen. Once the noise died down, King stepped forward and introduced himself as Morgan, ruler of the kingdom of Redis. He explained that their world was being attacked by demons, and that only a hero summoned from another world could defeat the demon lord. As Oda listened, something clicked in his mind. This was exactly like the isekai novels he always read. And strangely enough, he started to feel a little excited. The advisor announced that it was time to identify who among them was the chosen hero. He brought out a crystal ball and told everyone to place their hand on it so he could check their status. The first to go was Daska. He stepped up, said status, and his stats appeared. He'd hoped to be the hero, but it turned out he was just an animal trainer with an average power level of 450. The advisor reassured him that even so, his stats were impressive for someone at level 1 higher than most people in this world. Other students followed, receiving classes like Disenchanter, Knight, and Healer. The advisor seemed pleased by the variety of strong skills among the summoned group. He also mentioned that each of them could open their personal status window by saying status on their own. When Oda tried it, he discovered that his class was Assassin. It made sense. Quiet, unseen, a bit of a loner. But something immediately felt off. His stats weren't just high, they were ridiculously high. Daska had 450 points, which the advisor said was already above average. But Oda's stats? 1,800? That didn't make sense. Next up was Sakasa. When he touched the crystal, the ball glowed brightly, revealing that he was the chosen hero. No one seemed shocked. Sakasa had always been a natural leader, athletic, smart, and popular. He was the obvious choice. The advisor praised his potential, saying that most people maxed out around 500 points, while Sakasa already had 900, but that only made Oda more uneasy. If 900 was hero level, then what did it mean that his own stats were double that? As the advisor turned to him and asked if he wanted to go next, Oda froze. The thought of revealing his numbers in front of everyone made his stomach twist. He'd read enough isekai stories to know when something felt wrong in there. There's definitely something off about that king and his daughter. Oda isn't even sure if what they said about the demon lord is true. If he reveals his stats now, he could end up putting himself at a serious disadvantage. But refusing to show them would only draw unwanted attention. As he glances at his status screen, he notices a max-level skill called Presence Concealment. The moment he activates it, he practically disappears from the group. No one notices he's gone. Even Nanis, who was just talking to him moments ago, completely forgets Oda ever existed, just like his father once did. Once the advisor finishes recording everyone's abilities, he tells them that their training equipment will arrive soon. For now, they'll be escorted to their assigned bedrooms. Oda exhales quietly, relieved that he managed to go unnoticed. Now, all he has to do is use his skills to gather information and figure out what's really going on. As he walks down the dimly lit hallway, a faint red light catches his attention, a small camera mounted on the ceiling, silently watching the students. That's when it hits him for sure. Something about this place isn't right. Nobody seems to remember he even exists, so if he wants to survive, he'll have to rely entirely on himself. Eventually, he finds an unused bedroom that looks more like a storage room filled with leftover training gear. Deciding it's safer than any of the assigned quarters, he chooses to spend the night there. While rummaging through the equipment, he comes across a few items that seem made for him-light armor, a dagger, and a set of throwing knives. Perfect for an assassin. He gears up and slips into the night to start gathering intel. With his impressive stats, moving around is effortless. He can leap hundreds of feet into the air with ease. Using his concealment skill, he silently infiltrates the royal chambers and slips inside without a sound. From behind a pillar, he overhears a hushed conversation between King Morgan and the princess. They're talking about a secret plan, and the king warns her not to let any of the summoned students access the castle's archives. He says it would be bad if they discovered the truth. Oda doesn't know what that truth is yet, but he can already tell it's something dangerous. For a brief moment, he considers taking out the king right then and there to stop whatever scheme they're plotting. But that would be reckless without knowing the full story. For now, patience is his best weapon. The next morning, Oda sneaks into the dining hall and quietly grabs a piece of bread. As he eats in silence, he wonders if he should reveal himself and warn his classmates that the king is hiding something. But deep down, he knows they wouldn't believe him. Just then, Sakasa enters and gathers everyone's attention. He tells them that since they've gained incredible power in this new world, it's their duty to use it to defeat the Demon Lord, just as the king requested. Most of the students cheerfully agree, eager to play the role of heroes. Watching from the shadows, Oda realizes that as long as they see the king and princess as their allies, nothing he says will change their minds. For now, he'll have to keep investigating on his own. Later that day, students assemble in the courtyard for their first round of combat training. They're introduced to Sarin Mithray, the commander of Redis's Last Night Battalion. Serene explains that he'll be training them for the next month, and once their training is complete, they'll be allowed to explore the dungeon to test their abilities. Hidden in the shadows nearby, Oda watches them train. Something about the scene makes him uneasy, their excitement, their blind faith in the king's words. Still, there's not much he can do at the moment. He quietly turns to leave and continue gathering information, but just as he's about to slip away, he notices Sarin's gaze shift sharply in his direction. The Knight Commander pauses mid-instruction, then casually leaves his assistant Jill in charge of the students before walking off in the same direction Oda went. Oda stops near a fountain. He's trying to figure out where he should go next to uncover more clues. That's when he hears a calm voice behind him. Something wrong? Oda freezes. Someone found him in that shouldn't be possible. His concealment skill is still active. Slowly, he turns around to see Sarin standing there. The knight gives him a knowing look and tells him not to panic. His concealment is still working perfectly on everyone else. It's just that Sarin is a special case. His enchanted eyes allow him to detect the slightest temperature differences. Spotting Oda, he says, wasn't all that difficult. Realizing his cover might be blown, Oda instinctively reaches for his dagger, ready to silence Sarin before things get worse, but Sarin quickly assures him there's no need for that. He has no intention of telling the king or the princess about Oda. That catches Oda off guard. Expected the Knight Commander to be completely loyal to the royal family, but Serene admits that his loyalty is complicated. Right now, he has no reason to turn Oda in. The two of them sit down near the entrance, and Oda decides to be honest. He tells Sarin he's been trying to figure out a way into the archives since he knows almost nothing about this world, especially its magic system. For instance, his concealment skill was already maxed out when he arrived, but he has no clue how to level up any of his other abilities. Sarin offers to teach him how. He explains that even if Oda did get into the archives, he wouldn't find that kind of information there anyway. Hearing that Oda feels a spark of excitement, this could finally be a chance to train properly as an assassin. Still, he doesn't like accepting help for free. So he asks Sarin if there's anything he can do in return. Sarin smiles and says he'd simply like to hear more about Oda's home world. He's always been curious about other realms and thinks Oda's stories would be fascinating. And with that, the two officially decide to work together. Over the next few weeks, Oda learns more about this world, its history, the existence of other continents, and the races that live there, like elves and beastfolk. Once the lessons are over, Sarin begins training Oda directly, while his assistant Jill continues working with the other students. Everything seems to be going smoothly for a while. But one night, Oda meets with Saren after discovering a strange book hidden deep within the castle archives. Saren immediately understands what Oda's referring to. He was the one who placed that book there for Oda to find. It contains information about a plan that King Morgan is secretly working on. Saren explains that the king is no longer fit to rule, is willing to make horrific sacrifices just to satisfy his own ambitions, and that disgusts Saren and the other knights. They want to put an end to his corruption, but they're hoping to do it without unnecessary bloodshed. Oda admits he wishes he'd just killed the king. When he had the chance, it would have saved them all this trouble. But Saren shakes his head. He tells Oda he made the right decision by sparing him. Killing someone isn't a simple thing to live with, especially for someone as young as Oda. Just because he's an assassin doesn't mean killing should be his first solution.
Ow.
And if Oda truly wants to go home someday, he should avoid taking lives whenever possible. Oda listens quietly, appreciating Soren's advice. Then he asks why Soren has been helping him so much when he gains nothing from it. Soren smiles and says it's because he has high hopes for him and not just because of his stats. When Oda was first summoned, he was the only one who didn't blindly follow orders or get caught up in the excitement. He actually thought things through, and not many people could endure what Oda has and still come out stronger. The words make Oda a little embarrassed. He spent most of his life being ignored by everyone, and this is the first time anyone's ever spoken to him with such genuine respect. Saren chuckles, happy to see him smile. Then his expression turns serious. Admits there's something he needs help with the upcoming coup against the king. Oda thinks about it for a moment, then quietly says he'll consider it. By the end of the month, the heroes' training is finally complete. It's time for them to enter the dungeon. As they're paraded through the crowded streets, Oda notices a girl standing off to the side, glaring at the group with open hostility. He wonders why she looks at them that way when everyone else is cheering. Curious. He slips away from the group and silently approaches her. The girl startles when he appears behind her. But Oda quickly assures her he means no harm. He just wants to know why she seems so angry toward the heroes. While the rest of the people celebrate their arrival, she looks like she despises them. The girl studies him for a moment, then asks if he really doesn't know what the kingdom had to sacrifice to summon them here. Oda blinks in confusion. This is the first time he's heard anything about a sacrifice. She could easily tell him, but instead she simply says he should find the answer himself. As she turns to leave, she adds, almost like a promise, that this won't be the last time they meet. Soon after, the group finally enters the dungeon. Inside, they're ambushed by a horde of orcs. No matter how many they cut down, more just keep coming. The battle drags on until Sakasa, panting and bloodied, suggests they retreat. Serena agrees it's been enough for one day. He raises his divine sword and unleashes a powerful attack, clearing a path through the monsters, shouting for everyone to run. But when they reach the next chamber, they realize they've been cornered again, this time by an even larger wave of enemies. Their escape route is gone. That's when Sakasa remembers the special smoke bomb the princess gave him before the mission. She told him it would scare monsters away. Desperate, he tosses it toward the orcs. But instead of driving them off, smoke morphs one of them into a massive minute, toward twice the size and power of anything they've faced so far by the time Oda and Jill arrive. The party is already on the verge of collapse. Without hesitation, Oda dashes forward and drives his dagger toward the Minotaur's neck. But its hide is far too thick. The blade shatters instantly. Forced to fall back, Oda spots Sakasa, kneeling on the ground, clutching a broken arm, his expression twisted in despair. He's having a breakdown, unable to accept that he isn't strong enough to defeat the creature on his own. Oda narrows his eyes. Sakasa has always been calm under pressure. This reaction feels unnatural. Someone must have done something to him. He turns to the party's disenchanter and orders them to cast a curse removal spell. Sure enough, faint wisps of dark energy drift away from Sakasa's head, the remnants of a curse. Someone had planned this entire attack, and Oda has a good idea who. While the curse is being lifted, Oda tells Saren he's going to try out his new skill. Saren nods and unleashes a blast of lightning at the Minotaur, stunning it in place. As the monster convulses, Oda activates his shadow magic. Black tendrils surge from the darkness, piercing into the Minotaur's body and binding it completely. Then, inch by inch, he drags it into the shadows until the entire creature is consumed, leaving only its head behind. The battle is over. But as the last of the tendrils fade, Oda realizes he's losing control of his power. The shadows writhe around him like living snakes, refusing to obey. Serene rushes to his side, placing a firm hand on his shoulder, grounding him with calm words until Oda finally regains control and the darkness recedes. When they return to the castle, everyone breathes easier. Saren praises Oda for his quick thinking. If not for him, they might not have made it back alive. Still, he warns that the shadow ability, while powerful, puts a heavy strain on Oda's body and mind. He advises him to use it only when absolutely necessary. Then, with a faint smile, Saren presents Oda with a gift katana. He explains that it was forged by the very first hero summoned to this world centuries ago. Oda accepts it with quiet gratitude, but can't help wondering why Saren chose to give it to him instead of the current hero. Sakasa Saren explains that Sakasa already has the holy sword for battle. And besides, the king would immediately notice something's off if he saw Sakasa holding the katana mainly because Saren kind of stole it from the royal armory. Oda gets it, so he accepts the katana, thinking it's pretty cool that he gets to use the same sword as the former hero. But speaking of heroes, the situation with Sakasa still isn't any better. They figured out that he was cursed, and while the disenchantment spell helped a bit, the curse itself still remains. Oda plans to find out why later that night. Oda sneaks into the princess's room and finds her strengthening the curse on Sakasa using a magic crystal, turning him into a puppet. Before she can finish the spell, Oda acts fast and slices the crystal in half. That should stop the curse for now. But he still has a few questions. He points his sword at her throat and demands to know why she's doing this. The princess coldly says everything she does is for the king's sake. Oda asks why she's following his orders so blindly. But when he looks closer, he realizes there's no trace of free will behind her. Aishi's clearly being controlled too. Killing her wouldn't be right if she isn't acting on her own. So Oda simply leaves. He probably should have finished her off though, because as soon as he's gone, she goes into her closet filled with cursed crystals each, one linked to one of his classmates, and starts using them instead. A little while later, Oda brings the broken crystal to Saren and asks if he knows anything about it. Serene recognizes it instantly and mutters that he can't believe the king still hasn't given up on this plan. Then he asks Oda if he revealed himself to the princess while destroying the crystal. Oda admits that he did, saying he just wanted to understand what she was thinking and why she was doing all this. Saren tells him, the princess is nothing more than a puppet for the king now. But he also says Oda's done enough for the day and should get some rest, just not inside the castle. The princess is likely going to curse everyone besides Sakasa now. But since she doesn't know who Oda really is, she has no control over him. Still, now that she knows an assassin is inside the castle, the guards will spend all night searching every corner, and Oda won't be able to hide in storage rooms anymore. Oda apologizes for exposing himself without thinking of the consequences, but Saren tells him there's no need to apologize. Mistakes are a normal part of youth at Soren's job as the adult to help clean up afterward. Oda says he's grateful to have someone like Saren watching his back, and Saren tells him that if he really wants to repay him, he should take him along when he eventually finds a way back to Japan. That night, Oda sleeps in a tree outside, but he wakes up early to the sound of chaos coming from the castle. Curious about what's going on, he heads over and finds guards and his classmates gathered around. When Sakasa spots him, he looks relieved to see Oda again. Oda's glad that the curse seems broken, but Sakasa looks panicked and asks where he's been. Oda explains that he was just napping and asks what's happening. What he sees next horrifies him. Commander Saren is lying on the ground with a dagger in his chest. Oda is devastated and demands to know who did it. But suddenly, all of his classmates turn on him, accusing him of being the killer. The dagger in Soren's chest is the same one they saw Oda using just the other day. It looks like damning evidence, except they all saw that sword shatter against the Minotaur in the dungeon, so it can't possibly be his. Even so, they call him suspicious for always disappearing and reappearing whenever he wants. Oda realizes the princess must have successfully cursed all of them. That's why they're acting like this. The only one still normal is Sakasa, who tries to defend Oda, saying it's unfair to accuse him without proof. Then the king arrives and announces that Oda is being charged with treason for murdering Commander Soren. He orders the guards to execute him immediately. Oda catches a glimpse of the princess's smile and realizes he's been set up. There's no point in arguing. Nothing he says will change their minds. As the guards move in to stab him, Oda activates his concealment skill and vanishes. The king orders his men to search every inch of the castle for him in the chaos. Oda sneaks up to Jill, one of the few people he trusts. Jill quietly tells him the real killers were the king's own assassins. Now they'll be after Oda too. Jill explains that Saren had anticipated this might happen and prepared a bag of supplies for Oda in advance. Oda thanks him, grabs the provisions, and escapes the kingdom that night. Meanwhile, the king and princess meet to discuss how smoothly their plan went. The king's surprised how easy it was to get rid of Saren, but he's glad the assassins handled it quickly. The princess reports that she's finished cursing all the students except Sakasa. Now they just need an excuse to start a war with the Eastern nation. The king says the students will make perfect pawns, and as for Oda, he doubts the kid will survive alone. Still, just to be safe, he tells the princess to send the Night Raven assassins after him. Out in the wilderness, Oda reaches the dungeon Soren once said it's the safest place to hide since no one would bother searching there. It's risky, with limited food and water, but it's his only option. Even with his concealment skill, the monster's sharp senses make it dangerous. As Oda's assassin level increases, he'll eventually be able to hide his scent, footsteps, and even body heat completely. Every 10 levels, there's a boss room, and once you enter, you can't leave until you win. It's a gamble, but Oda doesn't have much of a choice. The moment he steps in, a chimera appears. He dodges its attacks at first, but its snake tail catches him off guard and spits venom into his leg. Slowed by the poison, he's struck in the back by its claws. As it's about to finish him, Oda uses his trump card. His shadow magic hand obliterates the chimera completely. He defeats the dungeon's first boss, but the injuries and exhaustion from using shadow magic leave him in critical shape. Sensing its master's life in danger, Oda's shadow skill automatically shifts from attack mode to recovery mode, healing his wounds as he lies unconscious. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Sakasa tells everyone that it's time to leave. They ask if he's seriously planning to hunt the Demon King right now, which actually sounds like a decent excuse to Sakasa, so he goes with it. But his classmates immediately tell him to shut up and sit down because they have no intention of going anywhere. That's when he realizes something is wrong. Their behavior must be the result of the curse Saren warned him about before he died. If it's true that everyone is under mind control, then he'll just have to leave on his own, to his surprise, though a few classmates actually agree to go with him. A few hours later, they all find themselves standing outside the city limits. They're shocked at how easily they managed to get out. But it makes sense their excuse for leaving was to fight the Demon Lord, and the king wouldn't have any reason to stop them from completing such an important mission as they travel farther from the city. Sakasa can't help but wonder why these particular people chose to follow him when everyone else refused. Yuki explains that she doesn't think anyone in their group is still under the princess's curse. Asina adds that he might have played a part in breaking them free somehow. He has faint memories of sneaking into the princess's room and shattering a bunch of crystals, though he doesn't remember exactly why he did it. Later, it's revealed that Jill was actually responsible for this. He used his manipulation skill to take control of Asina's body to destroy the crystals and free some of the students from the curse. Even if he could only save a few, Jill is glad he managed to fulfill Saren's final wish, as the group leaves the kingdom behind. Asuna silently vows to find a way to reconnect with Oda. He regrets not trying harder to reach him while he was still hiding inside the castle. Despite the curse clouding his judgment, the guilt of not standing up for his friend weighs heavily on him. Most of their classmates never really talked to Oda much, but Asina once ran into him by chance after school. Oda was working at a construction site. It was their first time meeting outside of school, and Oda had asked him to keep his part-time job a secret from his little sister. Asina promised he would, understanding what it's like to look after a younger sibling. Coincidentally, both of their sisters happened to be best friends, and the two boys laughed about the coincidence before parting ways. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeon, Oda slowly regains consciousness. The first thing that comes to mind is a dream about the day he met Asina. He wonders how his friend is doing, and he can't help worrying about his mom and little sister back in Japan. Once his thoughts settle, he suddenly realizes something strange. He's not in pain. Despite having been clawed across the back by the chimera, his body feels almost normal. When he calls up his status screen, he sees that his stats have risen dramatically after defeating the creature. But what confuses him most is that his HP is nearly full. He also notices his shadow magic skill has somehow reached level 3 even though he's only used it once. He doesn't have time to dwell on it, so he decides to keep moving forward. Deeper in the dungeon, he encounters a massive slime. After cutting it open, he's startled to find a beautiful elf girl trapped inside. Seeing this as a chance to test one of his new skills worlds, he activates it. Instantly, an overwhelming flood of information about the girl's life rushes into his mind. It's too much to handle, so he cancels the skill halfway through. Checking her vitals, he sees she's barely clinging to life with just 2% HP. Oda lifts her in his arms and carries her up to the 69th floor, laying her beside a pool of clear water. When she wakes, he offers her some water to drink and tells her to rest a little longer to recover. She says she's too hungry to sleep, so he prepares a bowl of warm porridge for her. Grateful, the girl, who introduces herself as Amelia, eats eagerly. Once she's finished, she asks how she ended up here, since she remembers being much deeper in the dungeon. Oda explains that this was the closest safe place he could find, so he carried her up. She's surprised that a total stranger would go to such lengths to help her, admitting that it's the kindest thing anyone has ever done for her. A few hours later, Amelia has fully recovered, and the two of them make their way down to the 80th floor together. Oda wonders why she's still with him, assuming she'd want to return to the surface. But Amelia tells him she came down here to clear the dungeon herself. She won't leave until she achieves her goal. They soon reach the boss chamber, and the moment they step inside, they're attacked by a massive dragon. Both dodge its first strike, and Amelia immediately uses her gravity magic to weigh the dragon down. Oda charges in for the killing blow, but the dragon somehow locks onto him and swats him out of the air with its tail. Amelia shouts that the dragon is tracking his mana signature and tells him to diffuse it into the surroundings. Oda admits he has no idea how to do that, so instead, he channels his raw mana into an attack and thrusts his blade straight through the dragon's eyes. The beast collapses, defeated. Amelia stares at him in disbelief, asking what he just did. Oda explains that since he didn't know how to diffuse his mana, he used the surrounding mana itself to strike the dragon. Shocked, Amelia realizes just how powerful and unusual his abilities are. Before she can ask any more questions, the dragon's corpse suddenly begins to glow.